What's up guys, we're going to be talking about Halo Infinite again today. So Halo Infinite is a live service game. Things get updated and things get changed. Therefore, some of my previous thoughts on Halo have changed. And today we're just going to walk through that because I'm actually happy, and if you know me, I like making positive videos. So we're going to split this video up into two different parts. First, I'm going to talk about the multiplayer, and then I'm going to talk about not necessarily the campaign, because I said everything I want to say about that, but more so just playing around in the open world all these months after release. So first up, let's talk about multiplayer. If you remember what I talked about last time, I complained about how Halo Infinite, and honestly Halo as a whole, has always had the problem with the precision weapon meta, where every other weapon isn't viable because there are just these headshot weapons that are the best at close range, mid-range, and long range. And it's so annoying because you have all these different weapons in the sandbox, you have this philosophy of shields and health, and none of that matters just because there are these broken weapons that everyone relies on. And it seemed like since Halo's inception, the developers just hammered in harder and harder on making these weapons more and more prevalent. But when I logged on to Halo Infinite a couple weeks ago, giving it another try again after, letting the time where I was frustrated ease off, I realized something. I came across someone using a battle rifle, and I was at close range with them, and I had an assault rifle. And I was prepared for the usual, okay, here I go, I'm gonna shoot at him, but he's gonna use this precision weapon and just kill me like nothing right at close range. But then something happened. I killed him. And then this happened again, and again, and again, and then I realized it's not just the assault rifle. The sentinel beam, the needler, the shotgun, the heat wave, and a lot of other close-range weapons suddenly were actually working. It was almost like the game actually managed to balance itself, and it has. As of right now, I can go into Halo Infinite, and if I'm at mid-range, I actually need to use mid-range weapons. If I'm at long range, I actually need to use long-range weapons. And for the first time in what I feel is Halo history, I have to use short-range weapons at close range, and that feels phenomenal. But it gets even better than that. Not only are ranged weapons much more balanced now, but even though Halo Infinite still deviates from the principal nature of Halo being shields, health, kinetic, and plasma, I find myself cycling through weapons a lot more often. I'm picking up different weapons to employ the different strategies that are associated with them. I might strip someone's shields with the assault rifle and put the finishing touches on with, let's say, the sentinel beam. Or vice versa, I'm switching weapons. Which, if you remember my criticisms of Halo before, never really happened. Let's take everyone's favorites for some reason. Halo 3 and Halo Reach. In those games, it's battle rifle or die, or DMR or die. But here, I'm going from the assault rifle to the commando, which actually feels really good, by the way. If you actually know how to feather the trigger, you can get some pretty decent shots, body shots and headshots. It's everything that I would want the precision weapons to be. But of course, a lot of people that are used to the precision weapon meta don't like the commando. But still, I like it. I found myself picking that up. And then when I go for closer range, more gung-ho tactics, I'll switch to the needler, which feels great in this game, by the way. This is probably the most viable needler in all of Halo multiplayer. The sentinel beam actually shreds, but again, like the commando, I need to watch that recoil. The plasma pistol actually is viable. You see, in a lot of Halo multiplayer games, that charge shot that you use with the plasma pistol isn't really viable because by the time you're finished charging the shot, shooting the shot, and hitting an enemy, they've already killed you with a headshot precision weapon. However, in this game, I'm actually running around with an assault rifle and a plasma pistol, and it's working really well. So I'm really happy with how this multiplayer is feeling, because even though it's still deviating from a lot of the core principles of Halo, the plasma pistol and assault rifle combo, that basic plasma, kinetic, shield, health, is actually in play. And I'm actually cycling through the different weapons and using different strategies. The multiplayer is varied, it's diverse, it's actually fun. But this also extends to the campaign. Now, the balancing in the campaign is I've already mentioned how I liked it. It feels pretty good. There's a couple enemies that I feel could have been done better, but for the most part, it's actually a really nice feeling sandbox to play with in this open world. Vehicles still could use a little bit of a buff, but again, that's a lot of nitpicky things. A couple standout things from the open world sandbox that I really like are a couple things that I brought up in the last video again. In the campaign, even on legendary difficulty, I don't need to use precision weapons to win. I don't need to hide in the corner like a bitch. I can move around, be active, be in the action. Halo always feels at its best when you're pushing forward, and in this campaign, I can always push forward. That being said, if I want to use something like the commando, the stalker rifle, or the battle rifle, the sniper to sit back and take out enemies before I charge in, I can do that. But at the same time, enemies have a range buff, so they can actually shoot back at me, whereas in other Halo games, it's kind of a dominant strategy to just sit back where the enemy can't hit you and pelt them down. So that's still here, but the enemies can also pelt you back. That feels great. Turrets have definitely had a buff. This applies to multiplayer too, but I'm going to talk about it here in the campaign. Turrets actually shred through enemies. You're no longer this slow walking piñata waiting for enemies to kill you, because when you're shooting at them, you actually feel like you're using a big, heavy, chunka weapon of mass destruction, and it's very rewarding every time you use it. Of course, it's not a go-to strategy, because there are some enemies that can just tank those shots and still come at you, but those are like the brute chieftains with gravity hammers. And I like that, because then that forces you to move, and that's honestly, again, really fun. Halo's best when you're on the move, pushing forward. And then again, similarly to multiplayer, there's a lot of weapons that just feel really good. The Needler is brilliant in the sense that they've weakened it against shields, but it's much stronger against unshielded opponents now. The special variants of the weapons in the campaign, I didn't really mention them before. I usually don't like it when there's special variants of guns. Let's take Far Cry 4 for example. Because in that game there, you have the base sandbox, but then you also have this special unlockable sandbox, which kind of serves as the better sandbox and therefore invalidates the original one. However, here in Halo Infinite, it's not so much that it's just a better version of the gun. Of course, there's some cases where it's like that. For example, the Bulldog, the special version of that, is everything the Bulldog should have been. You get more ammunition, and it really makes all the difference, because the Bulldog is great, but you run out of ammo fast. It is a hungry hippo when it comes to ammunition, and it's very easy to run dry super fast. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it balances the weapon in multiplayer, but in campaign, I guess it's just the part of me stuck in Halo Combat Evolved that likes their shotgun with a lot of ammunition. The special pistol, which kind of turns it into a DMR type weapon, kind of like Halo 1. Again, part of me thinks I just like these special weapons because they make the guns feel a lot more like Halo 1. I like that option is there, and I like how you have to unlock them. It's not perfect, and maybe I need to make another video really talking about my thoughts on this, but I have fun with it, and that's the key that I'm trying to bring up here. But it's more than just the sandbox that I'm really happy with this open world. It's just the open world itself. Of course, we complained before about not having, the biomes that we wanted and having certain boundaries being restrictive, but they've actually unrestricted certain boundaries. I can go to that island with the 3 turrets, and I never used to go there before. That used to be locked off for whatever reason. Now I can go and I can explore it freely. I like that. During the game's development, when they were still showing off trailers, they mentioned how they wanted this open world to feel like Halo 1's second mission on steroids. So I was playing through the open world, and I was just trying to think about it that way. I remember going through the second mission of Halo 1 for the first time and being mesmerized by the vistas, the long expanses. I remember going underneath the waterfall and looking around it, checking out the rocks. I remember seeing the beacon where you find your first set of Marines and being like, wow, I wish I could get to the top of this thing and check it out and see what this blue bolt is. Would it hurt me if it were to hit me? And in Halo Infinite, questions like that get answered. I can go to these beacons and check them out head to toe with the grapple hook. I could see what happens when that blue bolt goes up, whether I'm flying in a Banshee or if I just want to jump into it, and it phases right through me, which is really cool. But there's also this sense of serenity I get when exploring the more, I guess I should say, wet parts of the open world. Basically, if there's a part with like waterfalls or rivers or marshes even, this game looks really good. It's really annoying when you just have the constant trees and rocks, but there's a few spots in the open world that actually look really interesting. And this ties directly into another thing I want to bring up, where I said there's not much to do once you beat all of like the side content, like in terms of freeing the Marines, unlocking bases, and taking out banished strongholds, and that's still true. It still does feel desolate and kind of errandless, but it's still really nice to walk around. One, because it's an open world Halo game and I get random like Covenant or Banished encounters, and that's always going to be fun because Halo's gameplay loop is stellar. But it's also nice to just be walking around, find this kind of weird marsh with this crashed ship, and all of a sudden there's elite ultras here that I need to fight. I go through a harrowing battle, switching through different weapons, using the grapple hook, taking it down, and then finding one of these rings that I can scan and get a little bit of dialogue from the new Cortana. It's cool. It's hidden. It feels like I'm discovering something. And that's something that every open world should aspire to. If anything, the feeling I get when I'm wandering around Halo Infinite's open world and discovering these little combat encounters like this, and discovering little things that I could pick up that are like almost throwaway because they're so hidden and discreet, it reminds me of Far Cry 4. Just walking around a river in Kyrat and seeing where it leads to. Going into a cave and finding something cool that way. And just marveling at the beauty of the world. I haven't done that really since Far Cry 4. There's one spot I really like on the map. Hold up, there's a helicopter going by. There's like mass riots happening where I am, so like, yeah, that shit happens. Okay, it's gone. There's this one spot I really like in the open world, where it's at the top of this mountain near the corner of the map, and when you go up there, it's like this weird kind of rune-like structure that perfectly aligns with the Halo ring. It's got these two little ponds of water by it, all these pretty little flowers, and you can just look at the world. And what I was talking about just now with that Far Cry 4 feeling, I feel it the most when I'm up here. I find myself just looking at the water, dropping my weapons into it and just seeing how they look like with the water effects, getting up close and personal with these flowers, looking at the moss and cracks growing and decaying on this ruined structure. It's really not, it's a vibe. That's the easiest way to put it. It's just a vibe, and it's so relaxing. I still want to check out that Crashed Guardian though, and I still want more biomes, so I'm willing to wait, but as of right now, it's really nice to go about this open world. One, because the weapon sandbox and the enemies are so much fun to fuck with, even if I still don't see hunters or wraiths in the world. I want that. That's the next update that should be put in there. That's something that should be prioritized. There was this one encounter by a skull where I found 2 red hunters, and I had the most fun I had in Halo Infinite's campaign since I played it for the first time. Hunters in this game are amazing. I've said that a million times, and I will say it a million more. But yeah, besides that, just some closing thoughts on things that I feel like I forgot. The sandbox in the multiplayer is great because you get to switch around all these weapons. Turrets in the multiplayer work great. I find myself using all the Spartan abilities in the multiplayer. Like, I'll use the repulsor, I'll use the thruster to get away from grenades, I'll use the shield wall when I'm sniping so I can have like some cover from counter snipers, or when I'm like taking an objective so I don't get like naded to shit as soon as I'm in there. It's cool. There's so much in there, and I'm using all of it, and that is the hallmark of a good game. In conclusion, I'm just really happy that, you know, we're away from that precision weapon meta. Halo Infinite still has a long way to go, But as long as they don't fuck it up by returning to that style of just hit the head as you dash from side to side and stay in your scope, as long as we don't go back to that, as long as we stay away from weapons like, you know, the old school battle rifle, or God forbid the fucking DMR, we should be okay. And they're not gonna do that, right? Right?
Hey, yo, what the fuck?